From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Interpol has issued a red notice against the leader of Colombia's National Liberation Army. The judiciary in Colombia has filed charges against Nicolás Rodríguez Bautista, alias Gapino, for aggravated homicide and criminal recruitment. Some fear this will put the peace dialogue with the armed group at risk. Meanwhile, FARC member Iván Márquez says modifications made to the 2016 peace agreement are a betrayal. He believes the group was naive to lay down its weapons before the deal was implemented. On their part, Colombian authorities have accused him and other members of not being committed with peace.
Also, Iván Márquez and Oscar Montero have given a first statement on wanting to continue with the process. It's very important that they respond to the judge.
Our correspondent in Bogotá, José Manuel Jiménez, has more on the issue.
The contents of the letter from Iván Márquez and Oscar Montero were made public in Colombia on Tuesday. However, the controversial move was criticized by politicians who say the document should instead have been sent to the Special Jurisdiction for Peace. It all began on September 17th when the Peace Commission wrote the two former FARC fighters, whose whereabouts are unknown. The Commission asked them if they intended to continue the peace process. Márquez and Montero wrote back to the Commission. The FARC party has said it agrees with concerns outlined by Márquez and Montero about great difficulty in implementing peace agreements. The United Nations has called for its implementation and for an end to paramilitarism. That request has fallen on deaf ears. Instead, armed groups continue to murder social leaders across regions. They also say there's a serious problem with the delivery of justice. Case in point, the Jesus Santrich case. We still don't know whether or not he will be extradited. Months ago, public prosecutors announced that they are in possession of evidence in the form of audio recordings of persons allegedly involved in drug trafficking. However, just a few days ago, the very same public prosecutor said it is in fact the U.S. government which is in possession of that evidence and not them. Meanwhile, Márquez is attempting to discredit this evidence. The FARC has told Iván Márquez to join the party and to follow the political path they signed in order to find solutions.
Peru's Supreme Court has overturned the pardon given to former President Alberto Fujimori. The court has ordered Fujimori's arrest. He will be returned to prison where he was serving a 25-year sentence for human rights abuses. The court found grounds to uphold a civil appeal against the pardon granted last December by the President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Fujimori's pardon and release led to widespread protests, and Kuczynski was forced to resign 2 months later. Fujimori's daughter Keiko says she will appeal the court's decision. She believes her father has the right to be pardoned.
Today is one of the saddest days of our lives. It is extremely painful to know a judge from our country has taken away my father's freedom, saying that because he's not dying, he has no right to a humanitarian pardon.
Meanwhile, Fujimori's lawyers say they will appeal the decision based on the health condition of the former president, but activists say this is just an excuse for Fujimori to get away with his crimes.
In the morning when I spoke to him, he was quite shocked, and this, as you know, for someone who has a heart illness, can have an immediate effect.
The Peruvian government, on its part, said it respects the court's decision. In a public statement, the government says the judiciary has independence to take its decisions. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, brings us more.
We're outside the home of former President Alberto Fujimori. Just a few minutes ago, his daughter Keiko was here, but she quickly left after speaking to the media. She was literally in tears. She said this is one of the worst days of her life, as her father will have to return to prison again. We now await the judiciary's official instruction to the police to comply with the judge's order to detain the former president again. He had already been serving a 25-year sentence for crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, relatives of the victims and human rights organizations have said they will speak to the media as well, but they declare that justice has been served. A complaint had been filed at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights against the pardon Fujimori received. The International Court then asked the judiciary to review the decision and to determine if the pardon was in compliance with the law. Police forces are waiting outside Fujimori's home. They're waiting for an arrest order to be issued. Some supporters of the former president are also gathered here.
Chile's Archbishop appeared at the prosecutor's office accused of covering up sex abuse by members of the clergy. Cardinal Ricardo Esati exercised his right to remain silent. He faces charges of concealing the sex abuse and rape of at least 7 children by priest Oscar Muñoz, who was arrested in July of this year. The judiciary is currently investigating 119 sexual abuse cases and an alleged pedophile network in the Chilean church.
The truth is, the right to remain silent is expressly established within our penal processing code for all those accused of crimes. Additionally, it's true that our legislation establishes a very important aspect, which is that to exercise that right does not bring about any negative consequences.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Chile's President Sebastián Piñera looks to move past the sea access dispute with Bolivia. He said there is much more to live than Bolivia after meeting with former authorities and lawyers from the sea access case. Piñera says it is time to turn the page and look to the future. The International Court of Justice ruled on Monday that the landlocked Bolivia cannot force Chile to negotiate over granting its sovereign access to the Pacific Ocean.
We've spoken about what our country's relationship with Latin America should be, what it should be with the United States, with Pacific Asia, with Europe, and policies for the future, because a country like ours that is so integrated with the world must have international policies and a strategy that anticipates the future.
But Bolivian President Evo Morales has warned that the decisions have serious contradictions.
After his return from The Hague in the Netherlands, where he faced a ruling by the International Court of Justice that was favorable to Chile on the maritime case, President Evo Morales warned this was a contradiction.
I want to say to the International Court of Justice that this hurts our people a lot. The International Court of Justice is supposed to stand for the people, so I have decided to personally send a letter demonstrating their contradictions.
During a press conference, Morales spoke about several contradictions in the ruling. For example, the court accepted that Bolivia was founded with over 400 kilometers of coast in the Pacific Ocean, and that bilateral treaties and commitments did not solve the conflict. And yet, the court was not able to provide a favorable solution.
11 times the Organization of American States has resolved that there should be negotiations for sea access, for a corridor with sovereignty without territorial compensation. So an International Court of Justice that does not listen to an entire group of people, what kind of court is it?
The president reaffirmed that Bolivia will not quit on their goal of recovering sovereign access to the Pacific Ocean.
Everyone born after 1879 have continued to think about the sea, because Chile unjustly, with violence, via an undeclared war, invaded us, and it's not possible that the court benefits the invaders, the transnationals. At the end, this is what happened. I feel that it is a court for the peoples and not for the transnationals that take territories to exploit natural resources.
After 5 years of litigation, the International Court of Justice rejected the Bolivian petition that Chile must negotiate access to the sea for them. In 1879, Chile annexed the 120,000 square kilometers of territory that connected Bolivia with the Pacific Ocean.
With 4 days to go into Brazil's general elections, the candidates are making their final bid for votes. A series of recent polls commissioned by the mainstream media show the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad firmly in second place at around 21%. That puts him ahead of rivals from the center-left and the center-right. But polls also suggest that far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro has extended his lead in first place with around 31%. On Tuesday, Haddad warned that the Brazilian elite is trying to bring back the far-right. Meanwhile, the leader of the landless workers movement, João Pedro Stedile, told Telesur he doesn't believe there is a mass support for fascism in Brazil.
We know that the fascists put all their financial and media resources and their influence over the courts into this. But we have the people. There is no real support for fascism in Brazilian society to sustain Bolsonaro's candidacy. So he's reached his peak of about 30%. He can't go beyond that. And in the second round, all the activists of all social movements will go door to door, explaining to people what this coup means, what the capitalists, the gringos, and the fascists want. And on October 28th, we'll achieve a great victory for Haddad. We're confident we'll win.
Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly is discussing the framework to regulate its cryptocurrency, the Petro, which was launched globally earlier this week.
Venezuela's cryptocurrency has become an international exchange currency. The Petro is a tool that is expected to attract new investments to the country. According to President Nicolás Maduro, it will be key for the country's economic recovery.
October 1st, 2018 is a historic date for Venezuela. A new technology has been born. Our own technology, our own effort in a free and independent country. Our own oil-backed cryptocurrency, the Petro, has been born. Welcome, Petro. You're aimed at strengthening our economic recovery program.
The National Constituent Assembly's Economic Commission has presented a bill to regulate the cryptocurrency market. The aim is fighting the economic war Venezuela is suffering.
This bill approaches a series of concepts, such as blockchain and crypto actives. It also proposes the creation of a superintendent to regulate cryptocurrency circulation in the country, to establish the exchange mechanism and how the operation should be taken. So this bill is a revolution for the finances of the country, and it gives us currency sovereignty. We believe it is a main contribution for the economic recovery program that wants to grow and prosperity.
Venezuelans support the economic recovery program, whose main key is the digital currency. Experts say cryptocurrencies are the way to recover economic independence.
The goal of this currency for Venezuela is to be able to use it in the foreign market, so both the state and private businessmen are able to trade globally, to sell and buy with petros. For instance, in the oil market, in the area called Petrocaribe, that's the proper place to start using petro to replace dollars as exchange currency.
Venezuela is set to increase its investments and international purchase throughout its cryptocurrency, the petro. It will be negotiated through 6 international houses for the exchange of digital currencies. On October 29, Venezuela will also hold a meeting for cryptocurrency experts.
A new group of Venezuelan migrants has returned from Peru as part of the Return to the Homeland plan. 95 migrants arrived early Wednesday at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Caracas. This is the 5th flight to leave Peru under the government plan, which started last month. According to the government, over 3,700 Venezuelans have returned. Different social and political organizations in Argentina held a feminist forum against the G20 meeting. This happened in parallel to the Women 20 meeting, which intends to define a woman's agenda.
With the slogan, "Not in our name," demonstrators unanimously rejected the topics proposed in the G20 Women Group. They say the topics deny and cover up the structural causes of inequality, exclusion, and forced subordination.
Talking about work inclusion, they propose entrepreneurship, but we say that stands very far away from our experiences of social and popular economy. At the same time, they think the future of jobs will happen in a context of austerity, adjustments and labour reforms, yet they invite representatives from transnationals to speak and not rural women who suffer under these actions.
According to social leader Zulema Aguirre, the Women 20 meeting is a farce.
They take away our rights. When we organize ourselves to defend our rights, they criminalize us, kidnap us, jail us and judge us. These women will never think about how we can live better lives. That's why we need to come here to tell them the meeting is a lie.
In the protest, they also condemn the consequences that neoliberal politics promoted by the G20 create, which in Argentina are implemented by the Macri administration.
We understand that the International Monetary Fund has found in Mauricio Macri its main executor. Through the G20, they are applying adjustment policies against workers.
Women 20 talks about women empowerment, but we are seeing how they continue to sink into gender inequality since Macrismo arrived.
This feminist group, which was created by the need to give a voice to lesbian, bisexual, non-binary, trans women and transvestite, bring up topics that are not present in the Women 20 meeting.
Our migrant colleagues have a strong voice, and they are not included in the women. We want to display our organisation to show we are talking about activism that has no frontiers. It is not possible that migratory politics are not included. We are thinking about a world which is not dominated by capitalism.
Activists from the Feminist Forum against the G20 say that the future will be feminist or there will be none. That is why they will continue their fight on October the 30th and November the 1st, when the Summit of the Americas will take place in Argentina.
The LGBTQ community in Paraguay is demanding a law against all forms of discrimination. The community has a history of persecution under the dictatorship of Alfredo Stroessner.
For the last 15 years, the LGBTI coalition of Paraguay has been marching for their rights. They do this to commemorate the historic Letter from an Amoral Person, published in 1959, when the community is facing brutal persecution. It was the first act of resistance, and they're still demanding their rights.
We are the only country in South America that does not have a law against all forms of discrimination. All the other countries have such a law, but not Paraguay. Because, as I say, Paraguay has gone backwards in terms of rights in the last few years.
Bill against all forms of discrimination has been discussed intermittently for 10 years. For progressive forces, a legal tool like this is needed in a country where anti-rights sectors are still discriminating.
There have been 2 or 3 attempts, but we haven't been able to get sufficient numbers. The last time was in 2016, when sadly we were 3 votes short in the Senate of getting it approved. But we believe this is a matter of time, a matter of cultural advance in society that is very conservative.
The current president of Paraguay is Mario Abdo Benitez, son of the private secretary of the dictator Alfredo Stroessner for 35 years. The LGBT groups see the Abdo government as the successor of the regime that persecuted them for 35 years.
The Stronista dictatorship persecuted sexual dissidents throughout his government. Today, we have in government the son of the dictatorship, a successor of the dictatorship. This puts us on alert and reminds us of all those dark times that are coming back, maybe with another aesthetic. And that is why the slogan of this march is, with memory, pride and resistance, because we don't forget that we have been persecuted.
This year, the demonstration was called TLGBI. The organisations put the T of the trans community first because they have suffered the most attacks in recent years with hate crimes and persecutions.
Unions in Barbados are asking the government for details of its agreement with the International Monetary Fund. As part of the program approved by the IMF on Monday, public expenditure will be reduced. The government says it was an unavoidable choice as the country's debt has risen to 175% of its GDP. It is the 3rd highest debt of any country in the world. In Cuba, tobacco factory readers are keeping up this long tradition. The readers keep workers up to date on the happenings of the world and entertain them as they plug along with their day-to-day. Tobacco reading traces its roots back to the 1865, when it was first used to instruct tobacco workers on the job. In 2012, the practice was recognized as a cultural heritage. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. A Palestinian teenager has been killed in Gaza during a protest with the border with Israel. The young boy died when a tear gas canister fired by Israeli troops hit him in the head. 24 people were wounded near the border fence of the Gaza Strip. At least 193 Palestinians have been killed since March when the protests began. Canada has relaunched talks with indigenous tribes regarding the Trans Mountain Pipeline to the Pacific. The government was forced to dialogue with the communities after a court ruled that the indigenous groups get a say in the project. Authorities promised to listen to their concerns. The pipeline is aimed at moving nearly 900,000 barrels of oil a day from Alberta province to the Pacific coast. Canadian scientist Donna Strickland is the first female to win the Physics Nobel Prize since 1963. Dr. Strickland has been awarded for the development of a new technique to create short, intense laser pulses. She says women have come a long way in science, but still steps need to be taken for female scientists to be recognized and fulfill their careers.
So let's throw it open to the floor.
Somalis have marked the 25th anniversary of the Battle of Mogadishu that left hundreds of civilians dead and seriously wounded. The 1993 battle involved U.S. forces against local militia loyal to the then upcoming president, Mohamed Farad Aidid.
The world knows the casualties that the battle caused, whether it's about the lives lost, people losing their limbs, or the properties destroyed. More destruction has occurred.
A high court judge in Zimbabwe has ordered the state police to compensate a woman assaulted by security forces in 2016 anti-government protests. According to the court summons, Lilian Chinyere was brutally assaulted by armed riot police officers while sitting near a court entrance. The officers kicked her in the head and struck her several times with truncheons. Police was ordered to pay her $3,000. South Africa's finance minister has testified against former President Jacob Zuma in a trial for corruption. Zuma is accused of benefiting the wealthy Gupta family while in office. The family is investigated for profiting from government contracts in the energy and transport sectors. It is alleged that the family even interfered when it comes to appointing ministers.
For instance, the nuclear deal and
the wife of Malaysian former Prime Minister Rosmah Mansor has been arrested and now faces money laundering charges. She was linked in a multi-billion-dollar scandal that helped bring down the last government. She was previously questioned for several hours at the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. Mansor faces up to 15 years in prison if convicted. The ancient city of Sabrata in Libya has been classified as an endangered site by UNESCO. Shells, casings, and bullets still litter in the surrounding, a year after clashes between rival armed groups. Local snipers positioned themselves at the top of the amphitheater, once a jewel of the Roman Empire. UNESCO declared Sabrata to be a risk along with 4 other Libyan sites on its World Heritage List. Egypt is holding a sand sculpture exhibition in the outdoor museum of the town of Uganda. Sculptures of the Sphinx and the pyramids and even superheroes were made using only sand and water. This year, 17 artists from different countries made around 30 sculptures. Known as Sand City, this is the only open-air museum for sand sculptures in Africa and the Middle East. We come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.